Welcome to another episode of Due Diligence, a real estate podcast, live once again in our North Atlanta studios with my lovely colleague, Lee Taylor.
Good
I'm
afternoon.
Jason. Good afternoon, Lee.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm Jason Wieloch. We're real estate experts at the Wieloch Group at Compass, coming to you live each week, deep down in the basement of our quarantines. And we're ready to get back out there into the real world. But in the meantime, we're going to keep you updated on real estate news, things happen around the country, here locally in Atlanta, and we've started having some pretty cool guests recently.
Beyond cool.
Beyond cool. And today we have a really special one, and I'm going to let you take the reins and do the introductions.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, Southside Steve Rickman is joining the Due Diligence Real Estate Podcast today. And it is such a pleasure to have the hardest working radio, prankster, shock jock, DJ, entertainer, MC in the history of Atlanta media on the radio with us today. Southside Steve Rickman. Yeah, come on. We are so glad you're with us today.
Yeah, come on. Well, it's good to be on the Due Diligence podcast. I love a good due diligence real estate podcast. I mean, I've dabbled in real estate. I've lived places.
Yes, you have. You grew up in the West End. Is that right?
Yeah, that's where it all started. My father worked for the Atlanta magazine at the time, and he was assistant art director, and that would have been 1965. And my mother's family all lived in West End. She grew up in West End. My father grew up in Dunwoody, and met her during a wedding, and the rest is history. And they relocated in West End, and we lived there for about 4 years. But then, because the family was so into his business, and I come from an Irish Catholic background. My grandmother's father came over on the boat. And they were all around. It was all about family. So he's like, how do I get away? So he went to the Southside and moved to College Park, which at that point in time was just blowing up. The subdivision right off Old National Highway where we lived, they were just building it. And we relocated there. And that's where I went to elementary school and high school, right off Old National Highway. And that's where the Southside comes in.
Well, should we call you Northside, Steve, these days, since you're up in Milton?
I mean, you can. I think I've lived more years on the north side than I have the south side now, for sure.
We don't want to mess with that branding.
But it was one of those things where, I'm living there, and I moved up like in the 80s, mid 80s, right when I was working for the airlines, and I'd gotten into sales and doing some stuff, and I was also going to Georgia State. I was always living off Holcomb Bridge Road, either one side or the other, Peachtree Corners or down by Alpharetta Highway. And that was, where I stayed, and then I moved into Buckhead, and I retreated to the south side for a moment because we had a family business, and Dad's like, hey, I don't want to pay rent while this company's getting started. You live at home. And I'm like, well, damn. So went the dating out the window, unless I was staying at her house. Then I had my mom going, where were you last night? I'm like, what am I doing? But a buddy of mine told me, and he was right, and I'm not putting down that side of town whatsoever, but he came to me and he goes, look, nothing's ever going to happen to you down here. You got to be downtown. You got to be where things are happening. Yeah. And you got to go to those clubs, meet those people. That's where you got to build relationships. And he was right. So for me, it was living off 14th Street and living off Peachtree at Colonial Homes right off Bobby Jones Golf Course. That's where I lived until I started purchasing property. I just had to be in the mix.
I'm curious, Steve. I've been listening to you since I was a kid. How
old are you now?
I'm 34.
Oh, crap.
My colleague Lee here is a little bit older, but I remember listening to you in the car.
Steve and I are the same age.
Yeah, right. There you go.
Cool.
So I'm curious, how did all this get started? How'd you get into the radio business? What's the genesis of Southside Steve?
Well, I was working at the airport for ASA, and I was a ramp lead, which meant I got it in the plane. So I'd be like, on the radio, I'd be talking to our operations and back and forth from the pilot. And I'd be like, ramp 2, gate 2, aircraft 232 out of, headed to Fort Walton Beach, out gate 34, we're clearing 5. And then all of a sudden the people come down and I'm boarding them up. And I'm doing that, and I'm going to Georgia State. Well, a buddy of mine, Steve Cropper, who was also a ramp lead, He was at Georgia State, and he was on Album 88. And I'm like, so what are you doing on college radio? Because I'm going to Georgia State. He goes, well, I want to be a weatherman. And they allow me to do the weather reports. And I'm also getting some TV time, but I do it for the radio. And I was like, well, that sounds cool. I wanted to do stand-up originally. And I'm like, well, I just need to get some microphone experience. He goes, dude, you're at Georgia State. Get on the radio. That'll help you learn how to crack funny. You'll get on a microphone. So I started applying to 88 to be a stand-up guy. Well, I'm going in there. It's obvious I vote one way and they vote a whole nother way. So I got blocked. I got Republican blocked for a couple months and almost half a year till finally somebody dressed in all black with white makeup said, we'll take you. And and I went on 88 and I left the airlines because, I just knew where my income was going to be and I wasn't ever going to make the money. And I'm like, unless I marry a gold digger, I'm screwed. So, or not a gold digger. What's the thing I need? I need a hot chick.
You need a sugar mama.
That's it. Sugar mama. That's right. Everybody. Yeah. Okay. Gotcha.
Everybody you don't want a gold digger. You don't want a gold digger.
Yeah. I'm not digging for gold. That's right. Okay. Thank you. So I'm sitting there, I get on 88 and I'm doing it and I'm working in advertising. And then we have a client, and this is like a year and a half later, we have a client that wants to do time on 96 Rock. And it was a bungee jump tower down on the Southside through my connections down there in Fayetteville. So I hired some talent to do the voices of this commercial we were going to put on the air. Well, the talent didn't show. The girl did, the guy didn't. So I said, screw it, I'll do it. So I did it. And when I got done, the guy that was the production guy at 96 Rock goes, man, you're pretty funny. You got a quick wit and you got some voices. Have you ever thought about getting in radio? And I'm like, well, I'm in radio now. He goes, what? I said, I'm on Album 88 at Georgia State. And he's like, oh, my God, turn in your tapes. I said, okay. I turned in my air checks. Long story short, I got hired to do weekends on 96 Rock. Did that for a year. And then Christopher Rood comes to me and goes, hey, I heard you were in sales and that you've done a lot of sales work. I said, yeah. He goes, you're pretty good at cold calling and booking guests and working with people. I said, yeah. He goes, well, I hear you on air. How would you like to be my on-air producer for the morning show? And that was the greatest gift I ever got from Chris Rood. I never looked back. I've been doing radio ever since.
What was that, 94?
That would have been 94. I did weekends on 96 Rock. I had the Southside Steve Saturday night show. I had the worst shifts. I was doing midnight to 6 a.m. on Friday and midnight to 8 a.m. on Saturday. And, I was playing amateur soccer at the time. I was going to school, working. I just never stopped. And I had a lot going on. And then radio basically allowed me quit bartending at Rupert's, quit doing advertising. I got a concussion during a game. Chris Rood goes, soccer or radio, make a decision. And at the time I was making nothing, dude. I think it was $22,000 a year. And then I got a raise to 23. And that's nothing. But then all of a sudden they realized I had an outgoing personality and I was good at promotions. And I got my first gig prior to the Olympics and never looked back. Within 2 years, I was making as much as the people have been doing it 15, 20 years. And I was getting 4 gigs a week. So I was making more on the street than I was salary.
That's exactly what I thought you'd say.
Yeah.
Well, if you ever want to become a real estate agent, we've got plenty of room for you, Steve. Our friend Jimmy Barron, I'm sure you know Jimmy Barron. He's a buddy of ours over at KW locally.
No, that's awesome. Jimmy Barron, I love him. I had him on my podcast as well. I'm a big fan of Jimmy. When we started out, we were kind of against each other because 99X and 96 Rock were definitely butting heads back then.
Right.
But yeah, I'll be honest with you. The Wieloch real estate agency. If I ever got knocked out of radio, I think that's what I would do, dude.
Come on.
The picture.
Yeah, come on.
I just need somebody to help me with the paperwork, brother.
But we got you covered. It's a team atmosphere over here.
You just do what you do when you do it.
That's it. I love that, and I'm glad that you said that. I've got that shirt on yeahcomeon.com.
Yeah, I'm going to make sure everybody knows you're available with all kinds of merchandise at yeahcomeon.com.
Oh, yeah.
And you've got a podcast called The Yeah Come On Show.
Yeah.
And you have another podcast I find very interesting. You're the narrator of the Atlanta. What's the Atlanta stories? It's called Terminus.
Yes.
The stories
Terminus.
of Atlanta. The stories of Atlanta.
Stories of Atlanta. We covered the bombing at Centennial, which I was there when the bomb went off. I actually saw the bomb go off. So that was near and dear to me because I was a witness to it. I stayed on the air for about 4 hours afterwards on 96 Rock.
I remember. Yeah.
And then now we're doing the day trader murders, right off of Piedmont. And the funny thing is, I was driving down the road in a 96 Rock truck. I'd just been working at the station, and my roommate was in promotions. So I was, he brought the vehicles home, so I got to drive one most of the time. And right when the people were running across the street on Piedmont when the shooting had occurred, they saw the truck, and 3 or 4 people ran to me like I'm some news truck, and they start telling me what's going on. Well, man, I pulled over to the side with hazards, and I called Willard, who was on midday on 96 Rock, and went on air with him about the day trading shooting. So that's the one we're covering now. And I got to tell you, when this one comes out, we've got a few episodes on Terminus right now. It's brutal. It's very emotional what that guy did to his family and how he killed people. And I don't think many people have the facts. And the thing I like about doing the narration, I did Centennial by myself, but I'm doing the narration on the day trading murders with Dallas, who's on our country station.
Dallas McCade.
Yeah, Dallas McCade. And it's just really cool to do it with her. But the research team, Brett Barney, who's my co-host on my podcast, is unbelievable. These guys, the interviews they get, the people they find, it's extremely factual. So I'm very proud of that.
I'm actually curious because I didn't know you were so diversified, Steve. You've got all kinds of things going on in the fire here. And
he always has been.
Yeah.
He always has been, dude. You haven't been watching.
I mean, I know you've put on some boxing matches here and there. But I wasn't aware of the storytelling, but have you seen the Atlanta Murder HBO series that came out recently? Have you?
You mean the Missing and Murdered Children?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. I live that from a perspective, just like, I'm sure you too, Lee. If you're from the Atlanta area, Lee was like me, and it didn't matter where you lived. Mamas in rural subdivisions were like, you're not going out. There's somebody killing kids. And of course there were black children, but you didn't know if it was going to be white children. You didn't know if there was going to be a copycat. You just didn't know. You just knew a horrible thing was happening. But I remember that summer, I remember seeing those kids pop up and finding bodies in the Chattahoochee, and it was horrible. I watched it, and boy, it really, really brought it back. The good thing is you look at it, watch the show, they got the right guy. They got the murderer.
You think so? That was my next question.
I do. I think that guy did it. I think he did all of them. I think he just got caught and tied to a couple, and forensics, got him with carpet fibers, but I think he did them all. I think
he had a strange, perverse business of DJing and producing kids' music videos or something, music songs. It was real 2-bit shit, and it didn't add up when you looked at his motives.
No, I agree. Just and the thing is, you look at it, he came from a wonderful. That's why I think it's just a misconnect in the brain. He wasn't abused. His parents were fantastic. He had a better upbringing than I did. He was upper middle class. The guy was a Cub Scout. You look back at everything like, dude, you don't have an excuse for being weird. You're just weird.
What I love about this show is we really make people want to move to Atlanta.
I know.
And that's what I want to talk about this, Steve. That's one of the things I want to ask about. We joked about now Northside, Steve, living in Milton.
Yeah.
And you moved up with your lovely wife, and you got a baby on the way. You got a young son at home. It's a different lifestyle than your lifestyle when you're in Castlebury Hill with a beautiful truck and a beautiful Mustang. Right? Mustang.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
And a dirt bike and a Harley Davidson. I had it all, man.
All in Castlebury Hill, which most people would never, ever keep more than about one beater down there.
Yeah.
You, on the other hand, had a very unique parking situation in Castlebury Hill. Tell us about that.
I did. When I was looking, I knew I wanted to live in a loft. When I was living with my roommate at the time, we had moved up to Chamblee-Dunwoody Road inside the perimeter. And it was a guy I was working with rental property, and he was giving us a hell of a deal. So it was a bunch of us in radio living there. And the one guy is like building a house, and, he found his girl. And, of course, I was with a different girl every other night. And I'm like, all right, you're getting married, man. What the hell?
I am married.
Yeah, I looked in the bank account and I'm like, all right, I got some cash. So I take my favorite bartender who's also doing real estate at the time. He was one of the owners of Dixie Tavern, and he started getting into real estate. And I said, all right, man, help me out. So we start riding around. Well, he finds a subdivision in Kennesaw off Canton Road, and the guy's a big fan and says, the subdivision, the builder, and he says, I'll cut you some serious, deals here. I'll give you all the extra rounded brick and all. Next thing I know, I'm building a house in Kennesaw, and I was dating a girl. She moves in. So I'm sitting there. Of course, that didn't last. And I'm sitting there going, all right, what am I doing in Kennesaw? I just won Yard of the Month, and I'm single, man, and I'm in my early 30s. I'm like, oh, my God. So every movie I ever watched in the 80s, I wanted the loft. It was always the loft. So I wanted a loft. So I got a different real estate agent, and I didn't stop till I found one. And mine off of Peter Street, which is Lindbergh, or not Lindbergh. What is the street when you exit off Central Avenue? It's
Trinity.
Trinity. Thank you. Good. I'm glad you knew that. I can't even tell you the road I lived off of. but it was Trinity, and it turns into Peters Road right when you cross over Spring Street. And that's where I was. And it was cool because I was near West End. I was near the West End Mall. I was near where, I lived. I was about 3 miles away from the house I was born in. So I was like, well, this is cool. And it was right dead center. And the reason Atlanta worked for me is because doing promotions when I lived out in Kennesaw, if I had a gig in Cobb or a gig in Cartersville, it was convenient. But if I had to be in, out 20 the other direction, like Covington, man, it took forever. So I said, the best thing for me is live dead in the center. Buckhead for me wasn't the place to go. I wanted to be downtown. And it was a faux loft. It used to be a parking lot. They built them in 2002. It had 2-car garage and a courtyard, only 11 units where you came in through a gate that opened up that had barbed wire, and you drove down. They had 4 trees that were down there, really neat, and you drive past in between the trees to get into your garage. So I was protected. So I'm a guy that can live downtown with a 2-car garage, and then the front was zoned commercially, so I could run a business out of the other side of my garage, which had a front on Peter Street. Then you go up, you had a loft floor. Then you go up, you had 2 bedrooms with full baths. Then you go up and you had a rooftop deck. And
sweet.
Yeah, I was loving my life. And then I love the area so much. Swift and Company's across the way from me, catty corner to my unit. That's a 100-year-old building. I bought a unit in there for a rental property, 800 square foot, and I still own that today. It's been a headache, with that old of a building, but I still own it and rent it out. But I sold mine when I moved out to Milton. But those days downtown, just being a part of everything, the marches came by. I remember the car honks and everybody raising hell when Obama got elected. And of course I was like, what the hell? I'm like, he doesn't care about you. But he just does it. So, but I my wife used the word eclectic, and that's what it was. I loved that the area was more gay than hetero. I love the fact that it was taken care of, and that there were all the cool museums and all that. So for me, It was an artsy thing, which is the background I have through my father and my mother. I thought it was the perfect location to move. The West Side. I thought my property value was going to double or triple. And the rug pull on the West Side is that East Side went first. And they got the belt line, and they got intensified, and for me, the choice back then was, do you live in Grant Park on the East Side, or do you live in Castlebury on the West Side? And nobody, unless you wanted to carry a gun, was going to move to Cabbagetown, which was in the middle. So, I love Castlebury. I think it's popping now. It just didn't pop soon enough for me. The East Side did.
Every story has a moral on due diligence. And I think the moral to this story is that if you're 30 and single, winning Yard of the Year in Kennesaw, you need to make a change.
Yes, you do.
My neighbors, dude, I had one neighbor that cried. They loved me. They were all like, regular guys fans on 96 Rock. And I'm like, don't leave, man, don't leave. I'm like, I got to go, dude. Got to get the hell out of here. You're married with 2 kids. I don't want to have a kid. I never thought I would have children. Who knew?
Steve, what's the best celebrity home in Atlanta you've ever visited?
Oh man, there's a couple NFL players that I dug. Their homes. I got to tell you, the best one going right now, and this is going to throw you, and you wouldn't think it, but John Rocker has the nicest celebrity home right now. And the reason Rocker has it is he has a girlfriend that I think is in the real estate action. He's looking at trying to get into doing a reality show. I went and did his roast last year. I roasted him. And I showed up, and this house is unbelievable. I mean, the pool's out in the middle. The house is in like almost an L. It's like the ceilings are 30 foot high. I mean, this house is ungodly and all tile work. You guys know, you can walk around and start adding that up in your head. And he's got the circle driveway and then the wraparound back parking. And I'm like, I know the money you made. I know what your old house looked like. I spent a lot of time there. And I think what it is that at times they have an area where they stay and then they rent the house out for functions and to individuals. And I think that's how they're paying for it. But he's got the coolest house right now, and it's in Johns Creek. It's not far from my in-laws. It's probably maybe a mile and a half from Country Club of the South.
Wow, that's a curveball. I didn't expect that.
I knew that you wouldn't, and I'll second it with Ron White's house. I spent time there too. Ron White had a pretty sweet house, and he was out
Sugarloaf, right?
Yeah,
Sugarloaf
at the River Club, I think, right?
Yeah, the River Club. You got it.
Yeah, that's my hometown, Steve. Swanee, Georgia.
Boomsy, baby.
Yeah,
Boomsy.
That's nice out there. I like Swanee forever. The Falcon Inn, baby. Toast.
That's right.
Two Waffle Houses, one on each exit.
You could sit on the hill at McDonald's and watch practice back in the day in Swanee.
Yeah.
When the training camp was
I got one over on you for the Falcons. I'm from Greenville, South Carolina. I grew up in Greenville, and the Falcons trained at Furman University every summer before Sewanee and before Flowery Branch. So I was watching Nobis and White Shoes and Bartkowski as a kid in Greenville during the summers of the hot summer 70s.
Well, I would have killed to be you because those are my heroes. It's really about – when you're in high school, it makes you such an impact. And those Atlanta Falcons, the red, helmets and those players, William Andrews, and like you said, Bartkowski, and I love Tommy Nobis. I was fortunate enough to, during the Irish St. Patrick's Day parade in Atlanta, believe it or not, we were good friends with a priest that was Irish, and he was doing a float, and Tommy Nobis's car wouldn't run, so he got on our float. So I'm sitting there, and I got to do the parade within arm's reach of Tommy Nobis, and he was injured at the time. I remember he had a cast and was on crutches, but I was like, that was the coolest thing for me as a kid. That's the original Falcon right there.
Yeah, no kidding.
I'm curious how life in Johns Creek is during quarantine, or really if anything's changed at all.
Well, and again, I won't correct you too much, but because I make a living making mistakes. But
Milton.
I'm sorry, Milton.
But Johns Creek. I tell you what, Jason, just write it down. That's what I do. Just write down Milton, and every time you think of Southside, you'll have it right there.
All right.
I know.
Hey, we have a name for Milton too. Milton.
See, Milton?
Yes.
You know what? That's what I see around here. But no, my in-laws are in Johns Creek, and being out here, I got to tell you, man, the coolest thing about our neighborhood is that I have the best neighbors. I really feel like we moved into Pleasantville. My wife does too. She's the one, her and my mother-in-law found the house. And I'm on the golf course, so I was like, all right, what's the price tag on this thing? But everything just worked. We got in on a deal, and guy was asking, and I was here, and he was getting relocated, and he needed to sell the house, but he also needed somebody to buy it and let him stay in it for a couple months so his kids could finish school. I'm living with my in-laws. I'm like, no problem, dude. I'll buy the house. Like, let's close, whatever, and you finish up. So the paperwork was drawn up to cover me on that. And I let his kids finish school, so I got a better deal on the house. And these neighbors have become some of my closest friends. They're incredible. What they've done for us when we came in, somebody gets sick, they're like, we look after our own. The conversations, it is literally the greatest neighborhood I've ever been a part of. So we know everybody, and everybody associates and hangs out in each other's basements. So this quarantine for me has been social distancing. Nobody's going in anybody else's houses. Nobody's coming in ours. but there's a lot of driveway parties and a lot of deck parties where we're social distancing and hanging out.
Love it. I mean, who would have thought? Southside Steve and Milton, social distancing.
Dude, I got to tell you, part of it scratches my soul because it's not who I am. But, you know, Amanda is she's dealing with a guy that has bad habits, a guy that I wouldn't use selfish because I'm not a selfish person, but I've spent a lot of time on my own. So I'm kind of in my ways, and I don't have a lot of relationship experience. So for me, marriage has been tough, and I'm learning how to not be a hypocrite. I found out I was one of those.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I'm finding out not to have a short fuse. I come by it, you know, Irish, you know, and think through my thoughts. And raising a kids, I'm having to read books and not just spoil them, and realize that right now my son's a daddy's boy because I'm easier on him. And I could use the, hey, man, I'm 55, you know, it's a kid. You know, and I'm going to spoil him. I've been waiting for this moment, but my wife's like, no, it's going to be a concerted effort. He's not going to come to you or me and use us against each other. So I'm learning a lot. I think I'm going to be set up pretty sweet for this next boy of mine who will be born in literally 4.5 weeks. So it's just ungodly, the things I'm doing, the storytelling. I mean, I went from being a man whore to, I mean, bad. I'm talking freak of the week. You know, I look at the things I did, where I drove, how crazy I was, the planes I got on, the things I did, the limos I was in, the hot tubs, and the last second phone calls, and you know, I'm driving.
I wish I'd been there with you.
Yeah, I hear you. You know, and then you got your cheerleaders, and then, you know, I hooked up with a chick on Baywatch, and then of course there was, you know, Housewives of Atlanta, Kim. I dated her, and just right before Croy married her, and you know, I just look at it all, and I'm like, it's hard. It's hard to even think about that now because I am in love and I'm raising 2 kids, and it's just I'm glad I got to taste it. I got to tell you, being a father and having that kid run in my arms and seeing the look on my wife's face, and this is going to sound terribly like I've just tossed my sack out a window. It's better than watching some of the hottest chicks I've ever seen come across naked in heels right at me.
Hey, that's awesome, man. I'm happy for you.
Well, fatherhood is the coolest transformation I ever made in my life. And it happens in such a unique way. As soon as the baby comes into your life, that very minute,
it does.
Everything changes spiritually. Everything changes.
You're right. And I never knew it. I saw my brothers do it. I mean, my brothers are younger than me, 3 and 5 years. And man, they've got kids in college, and one's out of college. Yeah. And here I am with an infant and a 3-year-old, you know, and people laugh at me like, dude, how do you have the energy? But, you know, for me, it worked out right. I could not have accomplished my career being married. There's no way. Because when you're the third microphone working your way up with a talented morning show, you've got to be the guy that people live through, you know, vicariously. Yeah. And I had to be that guy. So it was timing. It was perfect. when I was ready, there she was.
Especially when the other 2 are misanthropic. Eric and Larry.
Dude, and I got to tell you, it's probably going to get back to him. Working with Jason, he doesn't know it. People call him Larry Light. I'm like, it's like if Larry had a son, it'd be him. And I'm like, okay, but he's a lot nicer. But my career is just that, you know. It's right. It's odd. Radio attracts an odd group of people. I feel like myself, Axel, who's on afternoons now. Certain guys, I think, just fell into it. Then there's certain guys like a Jimmy Barron. It was made for him, you know, that their personality, they've got an awareness, a snarkiness. They maybe didn't have the greatest upbringing, and they use that, you know, maybe picked on. That seems to be a thing for a lot of people in this business, you know, whereas I just say whatever comes in my mind, and it's worked for me.
It definitely has.
It definitely has worked for you, Southside Steve. We are so pleased that you got to come on our podcast today. Jason, how are we doing on time? And we're going to move in. I am having a great time, Steve. We appreciate it. And to all our
normal listeners, we are generally a real estate podcast, but we got to have fun too. And we got to talk about Atlanta.
We talked about Atlanta history right here.
We did.
Atlanta, you truly, again, I can't say enough about the fact that we are with an Atlanta media icon who has transformed what it's known to be a morning jock in Atlanta. Truly.
But we've got a fun
Lee Taylor and Jason Wieloch, that means a lot to me. When you asked me to come on, it was my pleasure. And I'll be honest with you, what you guys do, I find just as fascinating. And I think real estate is not only fascinating but rewarding. And you guys, I don't know where the market is now, how the housing market's working during a pandemic. I know I got new neighbors I haven't met yet. They moved in. But, I think a lot of people want to know where the next great place is to move. Where can you buy that your house is just going to be worth, twice as much in 10, 15 years? I've never had that luck. I don't know that I have that now. I think I'm going to increase about $100,000 over time. But, man, that's what everybody wants, that investment. Where do you go where it's just going to turn around? And I assume you guys know those things.
And that's why we put the podcast together, because most of history, I'd say, in the real estate profession, we've not been very content driven in providing the information. It's, real estate is pretty vain, Steve. It's, look at this beautiful house I listed, look, another closing this month. Right. So we're attempting to do that. But in short, I think that it's places that have, that are close to central dense areas that are walkable, near transportation.
I think downtowns in the suburbs, and the Beltline. Anything closer to the Beltline is just a winner right now. And your old neighborhood is the hottest neighborhood in Atlanta, Steve. Your old neighborhood, West End.
Are you serious?
I'm not shitting you.
Oh, damn it. I mean, damn it. All right. Well, I'm gonna go kick my wife's ass because we
have one more segment for you, and this is going to be Atlanta-based and fun, and this is going to be sort of a quick fire away, first thing that comes to mind scenario. And so we're going to start with the Atlanta Braves.
Frustrating.
I always said choke.
How about Atlanta Falcons?
Exciting.
Yes.
United.
Oh, man.
Atlanta.
I would say out of control.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. How about Castlebury Hill?
Hot.
Yes.
I would have to say that. No, I would say, I'm trying to look for the word. I would say it's a huge part of my life. So Castlebury, I would say special.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
How about Old Buckhead?
College.
How about New Buckhead?
Sucks.
96 Rock.
Awesome. Heritage.
Yes,
would be the word.
Yes. How about 100.5?
The new 96 Rock.
It is the new 96 Rock. Well, Jason, we have anything else for Steve today?
I think that's it. And Steve, we appreciate you having or being hosted by us today, and you did it on short notice.
Yeah,
we're really excited that you got to be a part of Due Diligence. And for those of you out there that came listening for potentially real estate advice, we are here every week. Myself, Jason Wieloch, and Lee Taylor with the Wieloch Group at Compass. We're here to help you buy and sell real estate in the Metro Atlanta area. And as we've been telling you, we are connected with some of the very best professionals across the country, whether it's New York, Chicago, LA, Nashville. We will connect you and get you with the best people. And if you're here, you can come hang out with us and find your next home. So
thank you, Steve.
In the meantime, Steve, Southside, enjoy quarantine in Milton. And hopefully we'll see you again soon.
And a baby on the way.
Yeah. I got to tell you guys, it meant a lot to me. You said some very nice things. It's very appreciated, and right back at you. And like I said, next to radio, I think real estate's one of the most exciting things you could be involved in. And it is all about where you live, isn't it?
It is.
It is.
Yeah, it is. Finding your own place.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Steve.
And we'll see everybody next week.
Thank you.
All right, man.